We brought our own board. Like I said, we have the Allen and Heath SQ5, in-ear monitors, microphones, the whole thing. And so we have these Pelican cases that we're dragging around the city, dragging up and down into the subway, and the subway system is gorgeous, especially coming from New York City. Like it's clean, it's really pretty, and the trains run incredibly on time. And so we're kind of running around 3 or 4 different stages all around the city. We're very lucky that we also get an interpreter or a guide, someone that is from the country that speaks the language, kind of pays for all our subway stuff, and kind of like is our chaperone, so to speak.
Wild.
It's really wild.
Who knew, man?
What's really cool is at the end of every day, because everyone is staying in 2 main hotels, but mostly in the same hotel, there's a dinner for everybody. And then they did it last year, and they didn't do it so much this year, so Six Appeal being who they are, and having a name in the place, we're able to lobby the hotel to bring back this idea of putting a stage up in the dinner room so that we could perform for each other. And every group got like, whoever wanted to go up, you're like, okay, there's no like list, like, all right, you're up next, then you, and you do one song. There's really no engineer. It's not competing at all. It's just kind of showing each other what we do, because there's such a vast amount. Well, how do I say it? There's so many different kinds of musicians and groups that identify as a cappella. They're so different from what you do.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I'm sure it was like a big learning experience.
It was amazing. We got to know so many different groups that we come to know and love, and still follow on Instagram. And whenever we tour places, we have a group or 2 in that country or that area to go and sing with, which is really great to come up, to meet people and, make friends that do what you do.
Networking is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the best things that's happened to me because of this podcast is it's just opened so many doors for me to like talk to different people who do different things in audio and music production, like all around the world.
Yeah.
And that's just the best.
So let me ask you, what is the most
turning around?
Yeah. What is something that someone said on your podcast that made you go, huh? And then you did something differently because of it?
Sure. There's an author who writes about audio that I was lucky enough to have on the podcast. His name is Mixerman, or Eric Seraphin. I've like read all his books, and he joined me on the podcast, and he talked about how he works he kind of will do tracking, and then he'll make a mix session. And then when he does overdubs with a band, for example, he'll open a new session and say like, okay, guitars, and another session keys, another session bass. And so each instrument or each like part has its own like individual session. Then you just export what you're finished with that and then pop it into the mix session. So you're building the mix as you go, but you're not. And then you use that mix session you just like do a bounce of that mix session and pop it in for whatever the next item you're adding to the arrangement is, and it kind of keeps the workflow really fast and CPU light. So that's something that he told me about live on the air, and I'm like, I got to do that. That makes so much sense.
Nice.
So that's just an example.
Sounds a little bit the opposite of what my stepbrother Max was talking about in either last week or 2 weeks ago episode about when he was first starting the dueling mixes and had only 11 tracks to work with and had to bring things in and bounce them down, and then bring things in and bounce them down. And
yeah, it's a little bit inverse, but also similar because it's commitment, you know? It's like, okay, I'm committing this, and now I'm going to put it into the next session. So in a sense, it is similar, but with with Mixerman / Eric Seraphin's method, you can always go back and just do a quick fix and then re-export it, pop it back into your mix session, and you're good to go.
Also, Max, I'm really happy that you found out what inserts were and don't have to RTAS everything forever.
Yes, good for you. So Evan, you're kind of like a jack of all trades. Like you're doing so many things, but it's all within a cappella.
Yeah. So for a while, I thought that was a negative. I thought that, I do a whole bunch of things kind of well, but I don't really have a thing. So it's not like every time someone needs a classical guitarist, they'll call me. Every time that they need, someone who can weave baskets underwater, they'll call me. And I thought that was a real negative for a long time. And I thought that that's why my career wasn't taking off. That's why I wasn't able to make the living I wanted to. And I feel differently now. I feel like whenever anybody needs anything, I can be that person. And I feel like that I do a lot of substituting and different things. And I feel like it's because I've built this culture of jack of all tradesness that I've been able to do that. And, it's one of the reasons that I will constantly post on social media. I feel like I try to do an Instagram story every day, sometimes more than once a day, so that anytime someone says, oh, I really need someone to arrange this song. I need someone to fill in as a beatboxer last second. I need an engineer to do this. I need someone to teach this thing to my class. That if they're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, I'm going to pop up every day so that I stay on their mind. And they're, oh yeah, Evan can do that. And the idea of Evan can do that is kind of my whole MO. I feel like anytime I come across something that I don't know how to do, I'll spend some time, some effort learning it. For instance, about a year or two ago, I got this job running this online TV network called Flow Voice. And I had never edited a video in my life. And in 6 months, I had edited 900 videos. And so now I can do that kind of work. And I do a bunch of content creation, digital media strategy for bands, for music festivals. And so still staying within the music niche, but I have a new skill set. I feel like anytime I take a new gig, it's less about how is this going to suit my needs, more about what can I leave this job with. If I'm going to take something I'm going to commit to for 6 months or a year or something, my first question is always, what am I going to leave with? Am I going to leave with a new skill, or am I going to develop something else? Because if I'm just going to coast and just make money, I feel like that's a good thing. It's important to make rent. It's not the easiest thing in the world. And also, you need to constantly be moving forward. You're going to end up feeling stuck. And I feel like if I had been the guitar player that everyone calls, that could be great. And I feel like my personality, I would get too bored with that. I might become a great guitar player, but the idea that I can do different things every day and still live in the same music world is something that's really important to me.
And specifically the a cappella world.
Yeah, I'd say it's 98% a cappella. I feel like a lot of the Instagram stuff and social media strategy and video editing I'm doing is broader music. Like I work for this guy named Avi Meza, who has an awesome wedding band and does like bar bat mitzvahs and different kind of simchas. I also worked for a couple different music festivals. I was working for the band War for a while. Their song.
Yeah, they had like a big song in the 60s.
Yeah. Now you owe War money. Yeah. So yeah, the point is, I think that you can diversify your skills, and I think that you can do a bunch of different things and not worry about not being able to make rent, because it means that when anybody asks you to do something, you can say yes.
So do you feel like there's a time where you do need to niche down?
I feel like niching down it was important for me in developing my identity as well as my brand, because I get calls from random people all the time because, for better or for worse, I've been known as like the a cappella guy in New York, and I get calls for these corporate gigs, or, I got a call a couple of years ago that this guy's daughter was getting married and she loved Pitch Perfect and wanted us to put together like a Pitch Perfect group to do like a flash mob at the wedding, and got my name from a friend of a friend of a friend because, oh, Evan will know how to do that. And I feel like as a networker of people is like, kind of like the secret job that I have. And then I niche it down to a cappella because that's what's really important to me. I feel like something I also learned from CASA, the Contemporary A Cappella Society, is to go why first. And my why I do things, is connecting with other people and making harmony, usually with just ourselves. And so everything stems from there. So I niche down to the why I do things, and then from there I figure out what the what and the how are.
Cool. It's like I was actually just talking about this on another episode I recorded recently. I don't know if it's going to probably air after this one, but we're talking about like how Apple, they had this like motto back in the day. I don't remember where I heard this from even, but it was something like, you are unique. You need to make your art. You need to be you and do how you're expressing. We just happen to make great computers. So we help you do that.
Yeah. The TED Talk that I learned this from that you might have heard too is a guy named Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Sinek.
Yes.
Definitely worth checking out.
What's his big book? I forgot.
It might be called Know Your Why. It might be
Start with Why.
Yeah, he's generally a marketing person.
Yeah.
But it's really amazing how it pervades all aspects, especially entrepreneurship and especially within music and branding. So if you haven't checked out Simon Sinek, Sinek, definitely check it out.
Cool, man. I'll definitely keep that in mind. So can you tell me, like, if someone doesn't know too much about a cappella and they want to get into it, like where would you start? Or they even want to like just explore what it is?
I mean, YouTube is an amazing thing. When I first started beatboxing, it was mostly listening to some a cappella records and mostly just listening to the radio or my favorite bands, my favorite drummers, and just trying to sit in the backseat of the car and annoy my mother and try to figure out how to approximate these sounds. But now there are so many tutorials and stuff. I would say, just like any other software that you're learning, I feel like if you go and you read a book or you watch an hour and a half video on Logic or Ableton or Pro Tools, you might learn a bunch of stuff, but it's never going to stick. So I think it's way better to go into the software, mess around until you hit a wall. It's like, all right, how do I do this? And then look up specifically how to do that. And that will stick because you had a problem and now you know how to solve it, as opposed to just a bunch of random knowledge you might not use for years if you hit that specific scenario. So I think that if you're looking to beatbox, you're looking to, record or edit, acapella, Melodyne is used a lot for editing and tuning acapella, as opposed to just going and looking at a tutorial. Try it, go do it for a while, hit a wall, and then go look up that specific thing. Yeah. Something that I find really interesting specifically in live acapella is, are you building the effect or are you helping the effect? Because I feel like a lot of times, I can just go to my mixing board and turn on some distortion. And if they want to have a guitar sound, you can, easily put the distortion on. But there are definitely ways to sing with your lip against your teeth to get a kind of sound. And then I can play with the EQ a little bit to kind of amplify that sound. It works really well with horn sounds. Cause you can make a kind of like trumpet sound. But if I then amp up the nasality of that, it might be around 900 or 1,000 hertz. So a place that you'd never want to get that peak nasality out. But if I add that nasality to that horn sound, it'll approximate the sound of a horn a lot better than trying to use some sort of plug-in or effect. And so I think that it goes more in line with, the nature of a cappella, of vocal play and instrument imitation.
Getting the source as close as possible to what you want it to really sound like.
That being said, there are a lot of EDM style groups and more electronic styles that, go heavier into the effects and will use a throat bass kind of effect, like a it's way too early to be doing that. And then, sometimes even octave below that, or, play with different kinds of things and purposely go effect heavy because that's the genre that they're going for. Right. I work more in the vocal side than the electronic-y effect side. So for work, I'm more amplifying or helping these natural vocal effects than going heavy into the other effects. And I feel like that's something that I only learned through trial and error. And then, again, if I I really wonder how you can make a clarinet sound or a saxophone sound, which is kind of like you do a bad Cartman impression and then you play with the EQ. But it was only after I went on YouTube and found a couple of tutorials or spoke to a couple of friends in the community that it was really helpful. Another way to get into the community is there is a Facebook group for an organization called CASA, which is the Contemporary A Cappella Society. It used to be the Contemporary A Cappella Society of America, which was CASA, CASA, but now it's the Contemporary A Cappella Society. We're not just in America. I'm definitely biased as the vice president of the organization, but it is kind of the a cappella watering hole on Facebook. It has thousands of members. Wow. It's where people will post, here's my new single, I'm looking for an arrangement of this, or I've hit a wall, how do I do that? And it's just kind of the watering hole, the forum of a cappella. So if you're interested in getting into the scene, whether professionally or just for fun, I would check out the CASA Facebook page, just kind of scroll through, see the kind of things that are on there. There's a whole bunch of videos, a whole bunch of really interesting threads.
Cool, man.
It's a good place to start.
Amazing. So you were mentioning Melodyne. I also use a lot of Melodyne. I'm sure you must have some tricks up your sleeve using Melodyne to get it to work faster for you. Can you tell me something? Well, a lot of times I might not know.
We'll see. A lot of times I'm using Melodyne to make learning tracks. Because so you write an arrangement. I use Sibelius. You might use Finale, but I think you're wrong.
I I don't use either. Just use MIDI.
And so you bounce out that MIDI, and sometimes, especially with younger groups or less experienced groups,